Today on the Tech Beyond Gender podcast, we are joined with Kaushiki Roy, a powerhouse in tech working in New Zealand for over 25 years. She's been a programmer and now she's a program manager, and she's led transformative projects across sectors like education, health, transport, and justice. A migrant woman of color, she's known not just for a strategic brilliance and adaptive mindset, but also for her deep empathy, optimism, and resilience in the face of personal health challenges. Get ready to be inspired by a leader who blends purpose, professionalism, and heart. Thank you, Kaushiki, for joining us. It's great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Meena, for having me. It's great to be here.
You've had an incredible career from being a programmer now to a program manager. Now, can you take us back to the beginning? What drew you into tech and how did your journey unfold?
That seems like a long, long time ago, Meena. And to be honest, I didn't really start with a career in tech. I was thrown into it. And then I discovered that I actually had a knack for it too. Um, and so, really, where it started was I wasn't really remotely interested in technology when I completed my um, first master's degree in English from Kolkata University back in India. Um, it was actually my dad who's no longer with us, sadly. Um, he was the one who actually had this vision. He knew, even though he himself didn't uh, hadn't done anything in computers or wasn't computer literate at that point. He was a senior official in the State Bank of India, and but he had this vision. He knew that the coming age computer skills and information technology skills would be essential. And therefore, he asked me to enroll in a computer course after I had finished my master's, while I was actually pursuing my master's in like the MPhil, which is called the Master's in Philosophy, but it's basically the step up course to a PhD. So I was looking to go through an academic career, but I did that. And then eventually I went into a career in finance, believe it or not. My first job was in housing finance. Um, it's because I wanted a more of a financially stable job. At that point, I thought that was, you know, uh, essential because my father was going to be retiring and things like that. And I just felt responsible. I felt I need, you know, how young people want to go and earn some money. That's what I thought. Oh, this is more sure. Academics is not that certain, takes a long time. So I went into that. And once I got into finance, and because I was doing the technology course, which was basically a 2 year diploma in it was called a higher diploma in software engineering, but it gave you a lot of skills, like not only in terms of, you know, the processing and Excel and all those things. At that point, it wasn't still Microsoft, the whole suite. It was just Word and Excel and Word Star, actually, it was. And, that as well as analytical and logical, skills, things like that. Believe it or not, even artificial intelligence had just been, the concepts of artificial intelligence had just been introduced. So, with that skill set, I actually was very well placed in my finance. So when I joined that first cohort of intake in that finance organization, I found myself at an advantage over others who didn't have that skill set. And from there, really, what happened was I went more into the information systems side, and I ended up staying in that organization for 6 years. And I went more into developing some systems, troubleshooting. So, modules of a financial accounting system, loan accounting system. Then I became the internal project manager for replacing that loan accounting system. And that's what I did there. And then after that, I went and I left and I actually became a program manager with a software company. So I gave up the finance job, went into, and that was a completely export oriented. So basically, at that point, we were delivering for clients in the US mainly, some internal clients, developing applications in Java, and um, there was a bit of C and things like that, some web development, all that. Then it was back to finance with in the stock market. But as you know, finance is very, very integrated with IT. You cannot really run a finance without IT anymore. So that's where that started. And yes, so that's how I found myself there. But when I came to New Zealand, so I then I joined an e-commerce, the Tata Group. So I was at Tata Interactive Systems, which was into e-learning, and an e-commerce organization, which is now called M Junction. It was Metal Junction with Tata Steel and Sale. It was a joint venture. And then eventually, after my father passed away in 2007, I came to New Zealand. Um, and my first job here was a IT project manager role. But I came here to do my third master's in information management. And in the middle, I had done an MBA as well. So
Oh, wow.
that's my story, my
Wow.
tech journey. And I
Masters.
was an IT BA as well. So and in New Zealand, I've worked for several organizations in this IT space. But currently, I'm actually not in the IT space. I'm in more in policy and so program management in policy. But you see, IT, there is nothing that doesn't have touch points with IT.
So, how many masters have you got, Kaushiki?
Three,
Three masters. So
three
you
master's degrees. Yes,
so you completed the masters in New Zealand as well, while even though you got
yes,
a
plus,
job. Yeah, okay.
yes, yes, yes. Some people call me a perpetual learner. Some people call me just mad.
Nice. So, how was your journey, initial days in New Zealand, initial years in New Zealand as a woman of color, being working in technology? How was it for you?
I think for me, very frankly, it wasn't. I'm quite blessed in the sense that I don't think the journey was that hard for me initially, simply because I did come here to do a degree with Victoria University. So that itself kind of got me into, first of all, it got me into a community. It was an executive MBA, so MIM. So it was initially it was part time. So I was working part time and doing that, right? So it was an evening one. So therefore, I could do 20 hours of work at the Ministry of Health in their project management space. That was, my first job was there was like literally administrative work, but it was still in the project finance and project management space. That was valuable experience just to know how the government works. And and then um, the masters in information management classes. Uh, it did kind of expand my connections. I knew people, like, so it helped me integrate. I think coming to study is a good way of integrating. That is one. And the second thing, I think, I guess, because it's interesting when I first started, and when I was working, my first job was Statistics New Zealand, and one of my colleagues there, she said, "Oh, Kaushiki, it doesn't seem like you've only been here a few months or a year because you fit like a hand in a glove." And I used to be surprised about that because I think I'm not sure what the reasons are. I guess in some way it could be the fact that, I did have, I guess, an English medium. So I had the command over the language, which is it's very essential, really, very frankly, when you're going to a new country. But also, I was born in Mumbai, so I had always this cosmopolitan kind of approach, and I was very used to working with other cultures and people. Having said that, it wasn't a bed of roses, though. Um, I think the challenges I faced were more about, I was probably, when I was applying for jobs, initially you do have to start kind of, you have to take a step back. When you're a migrant, most of the times it doesn't matter how senior you are in your home country or how qualified you are or educated you are. And I think every migrant faces that because essential thing is you don't have New Zealand experience, um, or you don't have that country's knowledge, experience, and particularly in Wellington, which is primarily dominated by the public sector. So I think that was one of the things. Like I had to prove myself additionally. And sometimes I got that barrier of you're overqualified. So that was the first thing, obviously. You don't have enough New Zealand experience and you're probably overqualified. So we don't want to take you for, a very low level entry job, kind of, entry level job, but we can't really give you a higher level job. But despite that, I did get my first job was a project manager. My full time job was a project manager job, and it was in technology. Um, yeah, I think, and then in the woman of color thing, I think it was more. Um, I faced challenges with my name. I still do. I think what I face is people don't know how to pronounce it, and then they get a bit shy of actually approaching me because they don't know how to pronounce my name. I face that a bit. Some people had even suggested I change my name, which I refused to do. Um, what other kind of challenges? I think sometimes it was also about when I was trying to go into pure technology, it was okay, you're not techie enough. So it's that thing of either you're too techie or you're not techie enough, if you know what I mean. Yes, I think these were the challenges mainly. Also, I suppose getting visibility, getting organizational visibility, and navigating organizational politics, I suppose, or getting things like any kind of upward mobility, or going to a leadership role. Those are things which I have struggled. I still struggle with them.
Mm.
Does that answer your question, Meena?
Yeah, it
Probably a
does.
roundabout way.
Um, like I'm quite keen, like especially with regards to organizational visibility. You mentioned that as one of the challenges, right?
Mm.
Were there any strategies that worked for you?
As I still said, I'm still struggling with that.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the strategy that does work is uh, make yourself develop a personal brand. So I think it's important to not shy away from putting your work forward. But what has to happen is because I think in New Zealand, there is this, we all know it's spoken about quite openly, is this tall poppy, syndrome thing. It's someone who tries to put forward their skills in a very in the face kind of way is seen as probably arrogance or impatience or whatever that might be. And therefore, that's not something that's appreciated. So I think it's more about the way you do it. So in New Zealand, most things have worked by developing personal rapport or connections. You have to build trust. I think that's one thing with people. And I don't know whether it's a New Zealand thing. Now, I haven't lived in any other country. I've lived in many other cities in India, but I've not lived in any other country. I've visited countries. So it might be just a thing everywhere, really. It's not a New Zealand thing. It's everything is based on trust. So the more you can do to engender trust in others, I think that would be, and also to put forward your skills. You have to show the what's in it for them kind of thing. So why should they? There are so many people there here. Why should they either hire you or give you that role over someone else? You can make that clear. What's the value you offer very clearly.
Okay, so what is that one moment in your journey in New Zealand, your career since 2007, especially in your early days, where you just surprised yourself? You thought, wow, this worked for me and this is really good.
Um, well, I suppose just getting that first job as a project manager, like I didn't have to drive taxis. Not that I can drive a taxi, but you know what I mean. There are people who have had to start, right? Even if they've had the qualifications, even if they've had New Zealand qualifications, there have been people who've had to start from the bottom. I did, or, particularly in the public sector at that point, particularly, it was very hard to get into. It was easier to get into the private sector then. And, getting into the public sector actually was very hard. So the fact that I got a project manager's position straight away, and ever since then, I've really been in the public sector, except for a few years at, Datacom, and with a consulting organization. But they were also working for the public sector. So eventually, I have really worked for the public sector. Um, I think that itself, the first job, and the completion of the master's in information management.
Hmm.
Uh, that was, but other than that, I think what I realized was that I could pretty much do anything with the knowledge and experience I had, because I had such a broad set of knowledge, skills, and experience. Uh, I think I discovered even my programming skills came into use. There was a time when I had to actually read code. Then this was like 10 years after I had left, coding and things like that. Um, I had to do it to make sense of some code which was not commented properly and things like that. It was, in a legacy system. And I was asked, because at that point I was working as a business analyst, like a senior business analyst. So it was a project management come senior business analyst role. And I went into that code and I could actually decipher it and say, okay, this is the logic that has been applied. I think that came as I was quite pleased to see that I hadn't forgotten it all. And that my dad was to always say, there is nothing in life, no knowledge in life ever goes waste.
Hmm.
I think that came to life.
That's amazing. So you have worked in government sector for many, many years, and
18 plus years, coming up to 19 now, actually. So I think it wasn't 25. My total experience is about, when did I start working? 94. I started working. So however many years that makes it now. 31. Oh my God, I'm old. Right.
so now with these 30 years you've worked in the sector, obviously you've worked in many roles as project manager,
Yes.
managing transformational projects. Now, what can you share a small win that ended up having a huge, big impact?
I've had several wins really, but the very first win actually was in my first job. I was actually able to introduce Agile with the help of the application development manager, of course. Um, introduce Agile technologies into Statistics New Zealand. So the Agile way of working, and this is way back in 2007. So Agile still struggles, in organizations to actually introduce it. And it was actually picked up. So Statistics New Zealand, at least the IT department, still continues to work in agile ways, and we all know that it has been picked up by many others. So I think that was the small win. Also, I was able to um, uh, basically influence some strategic decisions around their data management and things like that. That was definitely one win. Another win was, and that was not really in the IT sphere. I think the proudest moment I've had is to run the hospital, when I was at Wellington Hospital, running their linen and laundry rationalization and outsourcing project, because that opened my eyes to so many things. And just, it's fascinating how a hospital works, like from the delivery ward to the morgue, as I say, encompasses life itself.
Wow, working in a hospital. Now, what belief about yourself changed in that job or as you grew up in your career?
I guess the greatest belief that changed is that it was the self-doubt, I think. I started believing more in myself.
Mm.
So I was never an unconfident person, but I think when you migrate and things like that, you kind of, it gets a bit shaken, your confidence, because but then you realize that, or I realized that there's pretty much nothing that I couldn't do if I put my mind to it. And it's something my mother used to always say, that oh, my youngest daughter can do anything if she puts her mind to it. It's that thing of whatever you give your attention to, you can actually do it. So I think when you say the belief that changed, I suppose my earlier belief was maybe I can't do certain things, or maybe I need to do more to do certain things. And what changed was, no, um, I can do everything. You have to, first of all, give attention to that, and secondly, keep trying, and also adjust. It's like an experiment, right? You keep adjusting. You go with the hypothesis, and then you test the hypothesis, and if it fails, you just change your hypothesis.
Mm. Your response to this question just really highlights how you keep learning as well, right?
Yeah.
So, what keeps you inspired to be learning? What is it that you're learning right now?
Oh, I'm learning many, many things. At the moment, I'm in a new job. Like it's my third or fourth month
Mm.
into another government department. I'm working in the climate change space, which is fascinating. Um, so, of course, there's the whole subject matter to pick up there. But what I'm really interested now in my free time is philosophy and psychology and Sanskrit. So I'm learning those things as well. Yep. And then, of course, I did an English language, partners to teaching English as a second language. I've done that course. I did a mental health certification course, mental health first aid. Um, so that's what I'm learning. And in response to what keeps me going, or or what keeps me wanting to learn, I suppose it is that thing when you keep learning, then it gives me a sense of purpose, I think. And I've always been a curious person since I was a child. Uh, and I love variety. Um, and I've always been a why person. So asking the why question, why does this happen or why does that happen? My sister used to get really, really annoyed with me to ask her these questions. So that's what keeps me going. I think, in a way, um, knowledge is the one thing that nobody can take away from you. Right? Everything else can be taken away, but knowledge is something um, that really it doesn't. I mean, till the day you die, your knowledge lives with you. I mean, you can forget, you can get dementia and forget knowledge, but otherwise, it's not something really that someone can take from you. And in fact, there's a saying in Sanskrit um, which says that a king is respected in his kingdom, but the knowledgeable person is respected everywhere.
Mm.
So I think I've always been a seeker. A friend and a mentor of mine called me a seeker. So I think that's what keeps me going.
Mm. And I know personally know that you've had several health challenges in the last few years.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't mind sharing what they were and how do you find the strength to be able to actually continue working full time, and also have this interest in learning more. And not just that, you're still keen to contribute more to society, like you're involved in community projects, like even teaching English to someone. So, how do you manage it?
Divine grace is what I'd like to say, possibly. But I think um, it's about uh, how do I manage it? I think these things give me the energy.
Mm.
So even though I have my health challenges, like I've had 4 surgeries in 3 years or something like that, and then the surgeries didn't fix what it was supposed to fix, so I continue to live with what we call comorbidities, or multiple health issues, because from hormonal issues, really. um, it's all about what drives your purpose, I think, for me at least. um, a purpose driven life is very important for me. These things actually give me purpose. So even if my physical energy may be low, and I have noticed this in myself, I get this, you might call it a supernatural energy, an energy from outside, which still keeps me going, even though my physical energy is low. And I do burn out, don't get me wrong. And also, it's about prioritizing. I think it's a continuous I mean, this, what I was saying before this was at a very, idealistic, philosophical kind of level, or at an intuitive level. But on the other side, even talking practically and pragmatically about it, life is constantly about prioritization, just like a project or a portfolio of work. You have to constantly prioritize. Now, I do prioritize these things over other things. Now, whether that's wise or not, that depends on who you want to be, or what you want to be, what you want to be remembered as, what you want to contribute. It's also about alignment with my values, I suppose.
Mm. So, what are the different community projects you're involved in?
Off and on, this is the thing. So initially, I was very, very involved. I used to be a volunteer at age concern. I used to volunteer at the hospital as well as work at the hospital. Um, so I was an ED volunteer. And then, of course, I was on the committee member of the PMI, so the Project Management Institute, New Zealand. English language partners. I've been very actively involved in even art of living and the Asian New Zealand, like the Bali functions and things like that. I've actually held, you know, um, I mean, rather other than singing there, I have also kind of facilitated panel discussions, done knowledge sharing sessions on India and Diwali. I've been involved in inclusion and diversity and inclusion kind of projects or, initiatives, or haven't been given talks on that. Yeah, really anywhere where I can help. I think I enjoy teaching in some way.
Mm. So, what are the diversity and inclusion projects you were involved in?
So at MBI, when I was at the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, and I was actively a member of that team, which was working initially to set up the program. But everywhere I've gone, every organization, I've actually made an active to include, which doesn't mean just having a, um, you know, getting food, and that's part of it. But I've actually, even at my first job, I had organized a multicultural kind of day, cuisine, just to make more cultural awareness, really. But now, for example, my current organization, I'm volunteering for the Pink Shirt Day. Uh, Things like that. And then I gave a talk. I facilitated a panel discussion on diversity and inclusion, a talk at a meetup group. It's a leadership meetup group, diversity and inclusion. Yeah.
Nice. Is there a project or initiative that lit you up from inside?
I would say it was the hospital project, because I think, why did it light me up? It wasn't one of those, a linen and laundry project that wasn't classified as a sexy project. One of those flashy ones where you do a shiny new tool. But it still lit me up, because first of all, it opened my eyes to this really, it's a microcosm of the world, the hospital, really. It's a world in miniature. It's every aspect of life you can see in the hospital. And the second thing it opened my eyes to is how important something like linen, something you take for granted in a hospital, you only realize what it means when it doesn't turn up. And so when I made that, it was very successful. I could actually manage to, and I started with the whole business case stage to the actual implementation of it. So seeing it through to the end was, starting from even business, their processes. It wasn't only about delivery of something, for widget or something, which generally happens in IT, right? It's a solution, but this is an end-to-end solution. It includes training, change management. It was change management. A lot of change management involved. It was logistics, and it was change. But there was another project which lit me up, which was again not an IT project, but I was an APEC 2021. And the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. You know how New Zealand was the host in 2021 through
Yeah.
COVID. So I was the project manager for Indigenous inclusion, and this was the first time it was on the APEC agenda, although APEC
Wow.
has been going for 30 years. It was a completely new space for me, but to see, first of all, to put it on that agenda, that was a major achievement. But to, talk about, it wasn't only about, in New Zealand, it was about Maori Pacifica, people, but it was also bringing together Indigenous people from around the world. So that lit me up.
Very nice. So you did mention about the hospital. You just mentioned that it's a world on its own. Oh, what do you mean by that? What were the lessons that you learned just being there? not just as a person who was taking care of the technology needs, but just volunteering there and being there in that environment.
I think it's fair to say that the hospital is one place, regardless of whether you're a prince or a pauper, you will have visited or will be visiting sometime in your life. It's probably, I mean, as a life person, it's probably the only place where no matter who you are, you will have to go there. That's one. Secondly, as I said, I followed the linen wrong. So I was following linen from the delivery ward where life starts, right up to the morgue, where life ends, forensics, and everything. So to just see how one thing can actually thread through the whole end to end life, really. Also, to see people, I think a hospital is a place where most people who work there are people who care. You feel it as soon as you go in. And the thing is, I have interacted with the hospital in many ways. I've interacted as a project manager, I've interacted as a patient and as a volunteer. So I have seen it inside out now. I must know it like the back of my hand. So that's what I mean when I say that there is no aspect of life that you don't see in a hospital. You see love and you see concern and you see duty, you see stress, you see everything. You can see grief, you see happiness, you see joy. You even have pianos playing. So you have music and you have the cafe. I used to feel a great sense of pride when I walked those corridors every day. And I used to literally walk those hospital wards every day at that point because it was a business process efficiency project as well, right? So to ensure that the linen was getting to every ward on time, the right amount of linen, that was all part of it.
Really nice. So, over this period of time, like 30 years of being in your career and also just living life, is there a piece of advice that you received from someone which completely changed your mindset?
I received many pieces of advice from different people. I think the first piece of advice I got from them was never say would have, could have, should have. So woulda, coulda, shoulda is what she said. So we have this tendency of looking back, right? Would have, could have, should have are all things in the past. And it's almost a regret question, a regret statement. So don't look back, I think is the question. Look back to learn, but don't look back with regret. That's because everything you can do better, right? And everything had an alternative option. But if we keep thinking about that, it's not helpful. That was one. And the second thing was we are our own biggest blockers. Actually, if you want to do something, it may seem like things are blocking us. But if you really want to do something, then you can. You might have to change your approach to it. You may even have to define what it is that you want, what that success looks like. But we tend to even when we think of starting something new, if you observe your own mind, Meena, I don't know, maybe it's not true with you, but most of us, we first think of the things that can go wrong. Like we'll think of 5 things, reason why we shouldn't do something, and not one, man, maybe only one for why we should. Um, so I think that's what, so we can be our biggest blockers because the moment the thought arises, if we are immediately putting the anti thought in, the negative thought, then we are killing it there and there. So that was
Has
the other
that,
piece of
yeah, sorry. Has there been a person or a situation in your career which really sparked your interest in your career when you needed it?
Absolutely. They've always been, as I said, I call them a guardian angels from somewhere. They come from the woodwork in some way, either a mentor. So none of them are formal mentoring or coaching relationships, but a friend, a senior, a person who was, not necessarily my reporting manager, but senior person. Uh, my mother has always been someone who's, as I said, she's always made me believe in myself, I think. She may not know what I exactly do, like she didn't probably understand what project management was about or anything like that. She always had this incredible faith in me. She's passed on now, but I still feel that keeps me going, actually.
Is that a favorite quote or a book or a mantra that you often get reminded of in your life?
Um, that is Mahatma Gandhi's quote, which says, learn as if you were to live forever, and you live as though your life is going to end tomorrow. That's my mantra. In terms of books, I do read the Gita. I think it is something I always go back to, the Bhagavad Gita, because there is timeless wisdom in that. The Bhagavad Gita and the other ancient, um, the Vedas, the Upanishads, but actually the Gita distills that knowledge. So it's my go-to thing. It, the quote from there which says, "Do your duty without being attached to the outcomes." It's my go-to quote.
Is it easy to practice that?
Nothing is easy, but I have learned what it means now. Initially, they were just words, and it's very hard to actually, even Arjuna asks, uh, how is it possible? If you don't know what your outcomes are, if you don't want your outcomes, how can you do your duty? Because if you don't have a goal, how can you do your work? But that's not what's being said. What's being said is that you do your work, but you don't do it with the expectation of the outcome. You know why you're doing, you know the why of the work, but whether that reaches the outcome that you were expecting, that is not in your hands, because there are many things that can, but you've still done your work. So it's the non-attachment to the outcome of the work. You plant a tree, right? Now, it may or may not give fruit, but you're still planting it, because planting a tree is a good thing. But if you get too attached to the fact, oh, will that tree give you mangoes and apples? And then you get really disappointed because it hasn't. Or you run a race, you train for a race. And that sometimes happens. We get overly attached to our goals. And then the moment we don't achieve that, people go into depression or, and it's not helpful again. It's not about any moralistic or philosophical or idealistic goals. If you really look at it at a very practical level, you're not doing this for someone else. It's to be unattached to the goals is you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing anyone else a favor. Because if you're attached, you're the one who's going to suffer. It's a key to suffering, to be too attached to a goal. Doesn't mean that you're not ambitious, though. It doesn't mean that you don't strive towards goals. But it does mean um, like even a mother, if they have you have a child, I don't have children, but you have a child, and then you're bringing them up, you'll still educate them, feed them, do everything required. But if you keep thinking, oh, will my child become a doctor or an engineer, or and have all these expectations, which also happens in many cases. The child will grow up to look like this, the child will be this, will be that, will look after me, or whatever it is, whatever that thing is. What will it do to you? You don't have control over those things.
Mm.
But does that mean that you don't feed the child and educate the child? No, you still do it. So that's your duty, but you don't attach yourself to the outcome. That.
Mhm. Now, what advice would you give to your younger self walking into life?
Don't take life too seriously, or yourself too seriously, actually. I think that's really what it is. So again, do your duty to live life with integrity and honesty, and you'll be all right.
Mm. Like with our conversation, I can just feel that there's a lot of empathy, compassion, kindness that you exuberate. Now, how do you bring these qualities into your leadership or work?
You just again try to understand the other person. Um, in some ways, I think I've been blessed with that ability. I think it comes somewhere from within because it's just there. I mean, I've done my Gallup strengths finder, and empathy is what my top skill. So it's there. It's not something I've built on, but I have honed them because I really try to get to what lights up that person, what makes that person tick. And the thing is, there will always be people in your life that you may not agree with, or your style may not be the same. You may not end up liking the person. But I think you can still try to understand a person, understand the point of view of that person, even if it's different from you. That's what I try to do. So if that's called kindness, and of course that thing in the Bible, that saying in the Bible, which just says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." I mean, that's plain logic. It seems like common sense. Why would anyone want to do anything else? If you if there's a certain all of us want to be treated with kindness, right? I don't think there's anybody who says, "Oh, come, be rude to me, be violent towards me," or whatever. So that's the or to my loved ones. So that's the expectation that we have of others. Then why don't we do it for others? And you may not be reciprocated. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
What's that one thing you're doing right now that your future self will thank you for?
Studying philosophy and psychology
Nice. So, what's so special about these subjects?
help you understand people. And as they say in Terio, hitangata, hitangata, hitangata. It's the people, it's the people, it's the people. I think you may not like everybody, but it is possible, if I may say so, it is possible, depending on how you define the word love, it is possible. I think a lot of us think that we have to like somebody to love them, but I say it's the opposite. You can not like somebody, but you can love them. And in that case, I mean, by love, I mean having compassion, kindness, empathy towards the person.
Awesome, Kaushiki. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. It was really nice.
I don't know whether they're wise. These are the principles I live my life with. You can see that.
Yeah. We've known each other for many years, but I don't think we've ever made an attempt to just sit and have this sort of conversation in depth. So I really appreciate your time. I know you're such a busy woman, but thank you so much for making time for today.
Thank you for having me, Meena. Much appreciated.